welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. A little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks ?
Oh boy, and just like that, we are back. We're getting set for UFC Vegas 83 coming at you from, you guessed it, the UFC's Apex. It's going to be Song Yadong taking on Chris Gutierrez in this big-time main event. As always, one half of your hosting duo, Craig Allen FNP on X and Instagram, Matt Allen, respective socials at Matt Allen FNP. We make it easy for you when it comes down to this card, Matt. I'm glad that we do this show because we had a pretty big weight miss that's on this one. We had a fight that fell apart. Daniel Marcos now gets to fight in the spring, so look forward to that. A little bit of late winter, early spring action over there in the comments section. First, last, asking about everything. Bengals or Browns? You got to go with the Browns every time. Into the Wild. No, I'm like the Canadian song Aldo Nova. It's just a fantasy. No, yeah, the last show. That's next weekend. Robin's all about it. Otani is a Dodger. Matt, I need to find a new summer sport. It might be rugby. It might be the Canadian Football
You had the rug pulled out from under you, didn't you?
Yeah, the Toronto Blue Jays. The hats not going to be there next week, so get ready for that. But ultimately, Matt, a big story over in baseball. John Morosi, nowhere to be found. Canadian as well. But when it does come down to this fight card, like, I found it funny because the next screen that we go to, as the fans that watch this show on a regular basis know, we go to the Fight of the Night screen. You guys vote for it. It's over in the YouTube community tab. It's a little bit meat and potatoes what the fans voted for. Usually they kind of go out of left field. They pick a prelim. They pick a fun fight. They went with the main and the co-main. So,
well, that is the thing about this card, right? I have seen a lot more people be excited about the co-main event than the main event, just because they feel like the main event, they kind of know what's going to happen, right? Because Song Yadong is, I would say, a lot more hyped than Chris Gutierrez, but let me at least sell you on Chris Gutierrez having a chance, right? Yes, if you stack up all of their skills, Song Yadong is probably the more skilled fighter out of the two, but what's he going to do? He's going to fight at what Chris Gutierrez does so well, and that's what's going to make that main event so much fun. I'm really excited to see how he does deal with those leg kicks, with the power of Gutierrez, some of the unorthodox attacks that Gutierrez does bring into the cage, because Song Yadong feels like one of those fighters who, he always looks really good, but there might be an oh by the way in that fight, so it would be nice if he goes out there and has a nice performance, and if Gutierrez can bring the upside on the other side, what a massive performance that would be for him. I know the Frankie Edgar fight is kind of the fight that really propelled him into the mainstream, but if then he could beat Song Yadong, that really means that he's going to stay in that top 10 for a while.
Yeah, and again, there are a lot of fun fights on this one. Obviously, for Song Yadong, looks like it's a little bit of a stepping stone type of fight. Another opportunity in a main event, taking on Gutierrez. Song is favored in this one. We will throw it on over to that Fight of the Night screen. We have a look at it, and again, like, you guys went with this. This was your top pick for Fight of the Night in the community tab. I see the conversation over there about these guys are done. I do a monthly subscription, this, that, the other. We always said, we're not charging you to watch us on YouTube. It's free stuff. If you want to donate, you can donate. If you'd like, you can toss a like as well. But again, you guys voted for this as a Fight of the Night. I think it's a really fun fight. Obviously, you're going to hear us talk about it a little bit later. We'll bury that one. But it's really about distance management, the boxing versus the kickboxing, and that. And when you look at the second pick, Matt, I mean, the folks, they went with the co-main event. For me, Costa, Steve Garcia, even though it's at 155, that's my fight of the night. But this one is one of those oddball fights because it was thrown in on short notice. Anthony Smith, a little bit less than a month to get ready for this one. He was the last fighter to weigh in on Friday, 205.5, so no issues there. For Khalil Roundtree, he came in at 204, so you'll see that in the next screen. This is just the original graphic from the start if we break the fourth wall. But when you look at this fight, again, Muay Thai versus kind of a Muay Thai type stance also from Anthony Smith, but the more traditional stance out of Khalil Roundtree Jr. It's just, is it going to be the striking? Are we going to see a little bit of grappling?
And I like it a little bit. I see Rob G in the comments saying Pacers or Lakers, right? If you want to. Oh, that's the thing. I kind of liken this to that. We were talking about Pacers and Lakers before we started filming this, and that basketball game, I think, are going to know the result by the end of the first quarter. Like, if the Lakers can't keep up with the speed of the Pacers, then the Pacers are probably going to win. If Anthony Smith can't keep up with the power shots of Roundtree, and if he does start to feel uncomfortable, I think we might know how this fight goes after the first round, and vice versa. Let's say Anthony Smith gets on top of Roundtree, lands some of those big elbows, and really saps the energy from Khalil, then I also think we're probably going to know how the fight continues in that second and third round, because the experience factor definitely lies on the side of Anthony Smith, but it is a bit of a seesaw, right? Like, at one point, when does experience meet a lack of durability? And can Anthony Smith still keep up with some of those bigger shots?
We'll see how it plays out. Chris hitting us up in the super chat. Thank you, Chris, for doing that. And Matt, I mean, again, the fans of Question Mark Kicks, they know we start at the bottom of the card, and we eventually end up here in the main event, recapping things at the bottom. Dustin, no. I'm not going guest hosting on other shows. I apologize to folks out there, but Clint and the rest of the boys, they got their own shows. They can do their own things. Matt, guess what I'm going to get into? Fishing again. And I've got a great fishing book recommendation. I know everybody loves that, but it's going to relate to one of the main card fights, UFC 296. There's been a book hiding in the background for the last number of weeks, and finally I'm going to pull that one out. We're going to have some fun with it. That's an aggressive sentence. But Matt, when we start off on this card, a fight that's not fun, but we have to cover it anyway. Hyun dos Santos, who went by Hyun Amanda over on Dana White's Contender Series last year. They're back with Hyun Amanda again, but regardless of what you call her, she's married to Colton England, so the nicknames, they could be flying, the last names as well. She's going to be taking on Talita Alencar. And when you look at a fight like this, Matt, for Alencar, a multiple-time world champion in jiu-jitsu, no gi, in the gi. She's trained at a myriad of gyms since moving from Brazil to the States. American Combat Gym, a little bit of MMA Masters sprinkled in there at the very start. Now she's training out of a different gym, a big-time Muay Thai gym. But when you look at it for Alencar, the striking is basic, but it's there because she's such an experienced grappler. And I watched the movie in a couple of parts, but last night I finished it. Bill the Butcher is the main character in that movie. You know what movie I'm talking about?
I'm gonna drink your milkshake. Gangs of New York.
Yeah, well, two different
movies.
No,
I know. I love Daniel Day-Lewis so much. Gangs of New York's a great movie, though.
It is a good movie, but so I did watch that, and he's always out there sharpening those knives. And when you look at it for Talita Alencar, the knife that's so sharp, it is that grappling. Now, the takedowns, they're not the best, and so when you look at a fight like this for Hyun dos Santos, we've seen kind of the striking exposed in certain fights and certain losses as well. You see it in that fight. Thank you to the super chat there. Oh boy, it's Ian Campbell, and it says, let's celebrate their first super on a live stream. So much appreciated there from Ian Campbell. But when you look at this fight, Matt, again, for dos Santos, little bit of an odd matchup for her because her last time out, we saw her at atomweight winning the belt against Jillian DeCourcy with Invicta. Previous to that, a lot of fights at strawweight, so wasn't worried about the weight for either one of these women coming in. But I also thought Luana Santos would make it easily. So when you look at this fight, again, I mean, somebody like Hyun dos Santos, she can get it done with her takedown. She can get it done with her grappling. Plenty of armbar submission wins out of most of her submissions anyway. So I could see it if dos Santos utilizes some of her wrestling, she could actually fall to a disadvantage. Next weekend, we have a fight between two strikers who like to wrestle. Randy Brown taking on Muslim Salikov. You're not necessarily in the biggest of danger if you take down either man, especially with their submission game. But in this fight, it could get really dangerous. So again, we said at the start of the week, is Alencar, are you, the Michelle Watterson type? Like, what are you, Alencar? What are we going to get?
Well, that's why I kind of like in this fight to Park versus Munoz that we see a little bit higher up on the card, right? Because it is easy to compare Alencar to Munoz to where if they just get you in that one poor position, they're going to win the fight no matter what. If she gets on top, if she can isolate a limb or the neck, it doesn't really matter how much of a lead you have built up throughout those early rounds or any moment during the fight because she is such a specialist in some of those positions. And that's why I kind of laugh and that I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth because I don't have Alencar in this fight, even though she is the specialist, because I do think she's going to struggle on the feet. And while I do agree with you, could Dos Santos kind of Paul Craig herself into a bad position to where she's winning the fight and all of a sudden goes for an ill-advised takedown attempt? Yes, she could, but I still do think the overall work that she's able to get done on the feet, although saying this, I don't know how high of a ceiling I project on her, if you want the honest truth. She can grapple, which is the nice thing, right? She's not a one-note fighter. I don't think she should grapple in this fight by any means. I do think her striking's enough, but she has one of those interesting games to where I think we will learn a lot after this matchup.
Yeah, and again, like, are you a Waterson type? Can you get it done everywhere? Is the striking going to be there? The big one for Alencar, what I meant to say was, are you Jacqueline Omrim, who's so good at jiu-jitsu, a champ outside of the UFC, comes in, burns hot really quick, and then it's over, and she's since gotten a win? Or are you somebody like Tabitha Ricci? XD Wolfie Cupcake hitting up the super chat as well. That's much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
And Matt, earlier on in the chat, Alex, with some nice words out there, but at the same time, Bub, Joe Rogan kept a climbing Fight Night picks. It's a good night.
Well, he also had, like, he was on, what
he
was
was
that
also
show
on
with 8 Bugs?
He was also on Fear
I
Factor.
can't believe I forgot the name of
And
that.
very famous. We're two Canadians in New Brunswick. Matt, when we have a
News
look at...
Radio had a good run.
Yeah, when we have a look at Fight Night picks for the total votes, 73% of the fans going with Hyun Dos Santos, Hyun Amanda. I have her in this fight. I think the striking's a little bit better, but if she does find herself held up behind the black lines early, Alencar can stall out in a lot of those positions, and we did see it for Alencar her last time out against Stephanie Luciano over on Contender Series. Wins the first round, wins the second round, doesn't get the submissions rather, and then in the third round she got beat pillar to post. It ended up being a 10-8. So again, for me, I'm going with Dos Santos, but as Chris is saying there over in the comments section, yeah, I mean, this is one where you just kind of skip it, you get a bag of chips,
Put it
and you
this
continue.
way, I'm really excited for the Pacers to play the Lakers tonight.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. All right, Matt. So we move forward, and this is a big-time matchup. Listen, Shohei Ohtani getting a lot of the headlines for Japan today. Yamamoto, will he get signed? I don't know, but
please come
listen,
to the Yankees.
For Japan, Matt, Tatsuro Taira, he's done nothing but winning as an amateur, as a pro, already 14-0, and we got a lot of undefeated prospects in MMA breaking through right now. Again, next weekend, Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Wonder Boy. There's a lot to look forward to, and so for Taira, he gets another big opportunity. And where he's had some hard times, and we've seen some of his fights where he struggled with the leg kick and the early opportunity of that guillotine when he was taking on Jesus Aguilar, somebody that Shannon Ross on this card couldn't beat. Taira was able to overcome, get the submission at the end of the first round. His last time out, short shot there against Edgar Chairez. It was an oddball catch weight because Chairez was in on a little over a week's notice at 130 pounds. Taira ends up getting the win by decision. But when you look at a fight like this, Matt, Hernandez, he's got nice boxing. He's cute and quick with the kicks. He's an IMMAF champ. I hate to talk about next weekend again, but people are excited about it.
It is a good guy.
Shamil Gaziev. I mean, that guy, what is he? IMMAF champ. So is Carlos Hernandez. So again, in this fight, it's a big opportunity. And Brandor's saying they got to give Taira some better competition. Hernandez is a really good fighter, and his only big loss that we've seen any time recently, Alan Nascimento, who's supposed to be at the top of this card. Hopefully his knee's doing all right because he's out now. But Carlos Hernandez is one heck of a fighter, and if you watch this last fight against Dennis Bondar when he slammed him and knocked him out, it was wildness. So I'm excited for this fight, and I think Hernandez is another big test for Taira.
I'm going to split the difference between you guys. I kind of agree with both of you because I do think there's something to be said for bringing a prospect up and not just feeding them to the wolves after we do see them face adversity, because you are right too. He has been hurt on the feet. He has shown poor striking defense, and those are things that you can fix when you're on the outside of the top 15, right? But once you do start to get that notoriety of, hey, you're that next big time prospect, you're being thrown to those ranked fighters, it is really hard to go back and kind of reset from that position, and that is the issue Tatsuro might fall into if he does get that big step up in competition.
Well, we got the super chat there again from Ian Campbell. Thank you, sir. Been watching from Ontario, and thanks for the years, a lad. So much appreciated from Ian. But yeah, when you look at this fight, I mean, it seems like it's cut and dry. At Fight Night Picks, 88% of the fans have Taira, and his grappling is so good. His wrestling's so good. His main training partner is Chihiro Suzuki, the champ over with Ryzen, who beat Patricio Pitbull with Bellator, or the Bellator Ryzen crossover. So again, you have an ultimate stable building up over there at the gym in Palestra, Okinawa. But this, again, it is a really, really interesting fight. When you look at a guy like Hernandez, he's been able to build on some of these performances. His last time, he looked very good. Beating Victor Altamirano, that was a really good win, especially considering Altamirano with the kicks and a lot of the stuff he can do on the outside. So I'll let you finish your point on this one. But again, if Taira can't get things going early and can't get the grappling working, Hernandez is just a busybody in there.
It is a big if, though, right? Because if Tatsuro is able to get into those positions, not only is his offensive game so good with the ground and pound and the submissions, it's a sapping game, right? You're going to be a lesser version of yourself as the fight continues. So, well, yes, I do agree with you. Those striking, I guess, deficiencies are in his game, and there's something to worry about as he does rise the ranks. I do think he's going to be able to get this fight to some of those more advantageous positions, and that's why I like him in the overall pick, because his wrestling is very strong. I really do like those upper body trips and takedowns. Again, I brought up at the start of the week, most fighters I don't think are ready for that, right? They're used to defending single legs, double legs, but Tatsuro comes in with a very unique style of wrestling that honestly Hernandez might be ready for, because he himself is quite strong from that clinch position. So I'm really interested to see how these guys do. I'm going to sound like such a Dominic Cruz homer right now. The underhooks are going to be key, but I do like Tatsuro in this overall matchup.
That's it. I mean, Hernandez 9-2 as a pro, 13-12 as an amateur. He's fought a who's who at both spots. And again, I see it over there in the comments section. Marcus Mustard saying Carlos Hernandez representing the Midwest. Have to hit it with a sprinkle. I don't know about that, but for me, I'm going to stay away. I'm going to watch this fight. I'm going to enjoy it. You can toss a like as we move forward. I do have Taira in this one, but we'll see if the man himself, Carlos Hernandez, can come through in a big opportunity. And again, last weekend we saw some wild upsets. So yeah, they can happen for sure. Matt, I don't know about this one. Luana Santos, her last time out, she beats Juliana Mueller, the Ultimate Fighter winner from not so long ago, at 125 pounds. Luana Santos moves up to bantamweight. She's competed at bantamweight throughout her career, 139 pounds. So yeah, I mean, when you look at it for somebody like Santos, that is a tough look for sure. And the last time that I talked about her, I was by myself. I was previewing that fight. I was putting the kayaks on top of the Subaru, going out for a day on the water. I got to see a gender reveal party in the background of the head pond, so that was kind of crazy. But
are you just awkwardly in the background during their photos? Because I would laugh so hard.
So people, this is gonna lose all about 260 people, but we're out there paddling on the head pond. My wife's doing a little bit of cam work. I've got the GoPro on me. I'm talking about all the fights, and then over my shoulder I can see this big puff of pink, and I said, "Hey, can you get a video of that? Because I'm going to try and get a video of that." It was way off in the background, but
thank God.
They're most likely having a
People
girl.
thought they saw like Bigfoot swimming in the pond, but it was really you.
It was really me. Can't wait to go fishing this summer. But Matt, when we look at this fight, again, both women judokas. For Luana Santos, black belt. She's got good BJJ. For Stephanie Egger, black belt, but also an ADCC champ, and she's really made it kind of everywhere with that grappling. This weight miss by 3 pounds, because you got to make it 136, comes in at 139. This all of a sudden does scare me, because for Luana Santos, while we saw her fight excellent BJJ ace Jenna Bishop to somewhat of a close fight, I thought Santos maybe had a crack at one of the rounds, but Bishop was all over for the other two. If you can get through and not get submitted by Bishop, that does tell us a lot. But when you look at a fight like this where Egger has great upper body strength, we see those trips, we can see some of the takedown defense, I don't know. I have a hard time with this fight. Santos is a big jab, overhand right, jab, overhand right. And Egger's somebody who likes to kind of wait, lay back, hang out a little bit. So again, we'll see who's got better activity in this fight. We'll see how long it goes. But I don't like this weight miss, and all of a sudden my confidence is gone in Luana Santos.
I don't like the weight miss either. But I didn't have a big issue with picking Santos at the start of the week. That's the way I look at this. And although I do have an issue with the weight miss, I'm not going to switch the overall pick over it, because I think this fight really comes down to who's going to grapple the other one, right? If we do see striking, for the most part, it's probably going to be 50-50. Maybe one fighter does get a bit of an edge because they're able to land a big power shot, but this fight, more than anything, is going to come down to what they're able to get done on the mat. And while, yes, the overall top position, I think, will be the most important, because that tends to be what's rewarded by the judges, I think both grapplers are skilled enough to at least threaten off of the back to make this fight really interesting once it does hit the ground. So I still am excited to see what version of fight we do get out of these two, because I think the grappling is going to be really exciting. And I will bring up what I always say. When somebody misses weight like this, I always worry that they had like some kind of an injury, they weren't able to have a full camp, just some kind of weird thing that was out of their control. And that's what I do worry about for Santos. But again, I do go back to, I didn't have an issue picking her at the start of the week because I thought she'd be able to out-grapple her opponent. And I still think she'll be able to out-grapple her opponent, although if she did have a bad weight, what she obviously did. If the cardio shot, she's just not there, then I'm fine with taking the L.
The thing that doesn't make any sense on this one, for Santos in the camp, we talked about this at the start of the week. She trains at 011 MMA with Alan Bagoso. They both moved their camp to Team Alpha Male for this one. They've been there for weeks as far as Instagram's been concerned. So I don't know how the camps spin, and I don't like the weight miss.
But it's almost like you don't show the worst version of yourself on social media.
If I change picks on question mark kicks, I get them wrong, so I'll keep it with Luana Santos, but I really want to change my pick. I won't, but I want to. All right, move forward to the next matchup, Matt.
I like this fight.
Possible fight of the night. This one moved from featherweight up to lightweight. Steve Garcia seemed like there was a little bit of an illness last week. And again, when you do consider this fight, Graham Daunt saying, hey, Craig, do you eat kipper snacks while you fish? Hey, Graham, I've got 2 tins of kipper snacks left in my closet when you come through the side door. I eat them, and the dogs eat them, and they love them. So kipper snacks, just a true Canadian treat.
As Craig Lady of the Tramps kipper snacks with his dog.
Yeah, weird stuff.
I'm as excited for this fight as I am for any other because it's carried over a week, right?
So Steve Garcia is fast and loose with the striking. We know how tough he can be. Again, I talked about that Shayilan Nordambeka fight forever. You saw the shot to the liver, comes up top, goes back. Like, he's able to get it done at all of those 2 levels. He does it to the body, he does it to the head, but he doesn't really kick to the legs all that much. You know how powerful Steve Garcia can be. You know how up-de-down-de his chin can be. We saw that in his fight against Charlie Ontiveros. I won't mention Ontiveros as much as I did last Sunday when we taped the videos.
Even he couldn't believe how many times he was shouted out.
But yeah, it was a wild one. And I gotta bring one thing up, because I see Prince Vegeta-san and a few others talking about reach advantage, reach advantage, reach advantage. If you don't use your reach advantage, it doesn't matter at all. And the one fighter that we've seen that really play out for is Tatsuro Taira. He fights long, but he sticks his arms out there sometimes. He pulls in. He doesn't do well with his reach advantage. So when it does come to this one, Garcia's not too bad with the reach advantage, but sometimes he can drop that hand and he can find himself getting hit quite a bit. And when you look at this one, for Costa, the one thing that he does well that could cost him in this one is too many spins. Kid likes to spin, and that could cost him.
Again, I'm going to split the difference between you guys. Both of y'all are right. Like, reach is just a stat. It's good, it's bad. Like Craig said, it depends on how you use it. But Taira and Garcia are very different fighters. Like, Garcia is going to be able to hit you with some of those longer range attacks. His power is much higher on the inside. We see those body hooks, we see the uppercuts as well. And those are things Costa does have to worry about, because if Costa gets comfortable just kind of throwing empty volume from the outside, we brought up Clay Guida's accuracy numbers the other day. If Costa is comfortable just kind of hitting arms and elbows, using his feet to get out of danger, and just kind of resting and trying to win a decision that way, he could just fall into a false sense of security and eat one of those big shots from Steve Garcia. But I think the takedowns of Costa are at least not going to allow Garcia to be as comfortable on the feet to just really plant on those big power shots and land them as consistently.
Queen Boudica Radiant, I don't know what you're talking about. Condescending AF as usual towards the women's fights. I have to say this. It's not the most fun fight because it's out of the top 15. One of the women missed weight by 3 pounds. I said they're excellent judokas, and they both have really good right hands. It's just in this matchup, I have a lot of questions about the weight miss by Luana Santos.
I'm excited about their grappling.
Yeah, and then when it comes down to this matchup, I have a hard time predicting a ceiling. Both women have really good grappling. It's a really hard fight to predict.
Here's the thing. I have a hard time projecting the ceiling on most people in the opening fights on UFC cards. It's not uncommon regardless of gender.
So apologies if we yeah.
But again, the overall activity and wrestling of Costa, I do think, could at least put those question marks in Garcia's head. Whether or not he goes to complete the takedowns or not, they're not going to let Garcia just be as comfortable winging as many power shots. Because if he is able to cut the distance on some of those kicks and make this more of a boxing match that is a kickboxing match, I do think Garcia can have a lot of success. But the last thing I'll say about this fight is, I just want the best version of it, right? Like, hopefully that illness last week didn't just completely ruin Steve Garcia, and he is a better version of himself, because we were both so excited for this fight last week, and I hope we get an equal version of it this week.
Yeah, and this should be a very, very enjoyable one. Again, we said this could have been a fight of the night last weekend, then it was carried forward to this weekend. So if we don't seem as amped for Luana Santos, Stephanie Eggers, maybe we should. With this one, it's the 2 weaker, so you get to be excited about it again. Hopefully Steve Garcia is doing well. I mentioned that interview that I watched again a couple of weeks ago that he did with JHK. Talked about a back injury that he had when he was training at Jackson Wink. He was able to overcome. And if you look at it, I mean, again, last weekend, Cody Brundage, a little bit of a stinger, had a little bit of a neck to back injury, and he came out looking really good his last time out. So when you look at this one, Matt, 65% of the fans at Fight Night Picks going with Costa to get the win. Now, John Kalachak, Queen Boudica's been there for a really long time. So, again, I apologize if there was a miscommunication, but she's not a troll. She's been having a good time. But when we look at this one, Matt, I mean, I do have Costa. I think with the wrestling, with the grappling, he's got a little bit of an edge right there. The striking, not in terms of power, so we'll see if he's able to cut off some of those straight line attacks from Steve Garcia. But for me, I do have Costa. For Mujib Rahmani saying, can you guys please talk about Nasrat Haqparast fight?
We will, don't you worry. If you just stay tuned.
That's coming up. So again, for both of us, going with Costa.
But one of the better fights in the card, I would say.
It should be a really fun fight. All right, Matt. So we get into the next one. It's a head scratcher. For Hyun Park, if you look at it, I mean, his last 2 fights, he's been dropped. He's been able to overcome it with his grappling. For Shannon Ross, the 5-on-in, it's 1-4, and of those 4 losses, all 4 of them by finish. You look at it, the first one in that 5-on-in, it's for the championship over in Australia. Super chat from Dime Shot saying, thank you for everything. If you guys are taking a break, I wouldn't love the UFC without you guys. All right.
That was a very kind message.
Yes, I really do appreciate you. Dime shot. Never thought I'd say that. But Matt, when we look at this fight, for Shannon Ross, again, the air seg fight gets dropped by a right cross. He goes down to the ground. Air seg comes, gets the back, rear naked choke win. That's the air seg plan. That's how he finishes a lot of his fights. And then you look at these fights. Vinicius Salvador, it's a knock him down, drag him out type of fight. He's got the blood poisoning after the fights, and then the UFC signs him. He loses to a guy who goes by his initials, Cledison Rodriguez. And again, if you do look at it for Shannon Ross, his last time out, he got finished. He got finished in the first round by Jesus Aguilar. A guy who's more about the grappling than he is about the knockout shots, but Jesus is able to get it done. So when you look at this fight, Ross might not seem like a tough test for Park, but Ross is a tough test for Park because Hyun Park doesn't have the fastest hands. He doesn't have the strongest of shots. He's not a really hard striker. He gets it done a lot with his grappling. We saw from Shannon Ross back when he was on the regional scene, when he was winning a lot of his fights, he was out conditioning some of his fighters. Exactly. He had better cardio than a lot of the guys. He was able to roll with a lot of the punches, and he was able to wear down a lot of these fighters. So again, you can never count out a guy, even though he's 1-4 on that 5-on-in. We pointed to that last weekend with Brundage and with Stuyvesant. This could be a big opportunity for him. I do still have Park in the matchup. I think the wrestling's a little bit better, but it's a tricky fight for both these guys.
It's like comparing Peyton Pritchard to Paul Reed. Like, they're both bench players. They both play around the same. I guess Paul Reed plays a lot more minutes per game, but they're bench players. Their skill sets are so different that it's very hard to see the overlap and where these two guys are not only going to have advantages over the other, because both fighters' primary skill set is such an advantage over their opponent in this matchup. If Ross is able to defend a couple of those takedowns, keep his separation, and then really start to go downhill with his own volume, then we could see him get a win, and that's why I'm so surprised to see the odds where they are. I think Park is like a -500-600 favorite, which is a little bit surprising just because I agree with you. My pick is Park, but if he's not able to get the fight to where his skill set is, which is the grappling, which is the top position, we could see him just kind of be exposed on the feet to some of those longer range strikes of Shannon Ross.
That's it. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen though. If you just look at their records on Topology and you see that Park is a -600 favorite, you go, oh yeah, well, I mean, he's got to win. 88% of the fans at Fight Night picks have him to win. But again, you go back and you watch the Park fights. His last time out against Sunguk Choi gets dropped early. Against Top Noi Kyuram, he gets dropped really early. He has a propensity to dropping his hands and backing up with his chin up, and there's no payback on the comeback. And so for Park, it really is a worry in this fight. I would be worried if I was putting a lot of stock in it. For me, I do have Park, but it's a tricky fight for him. It's probably one of the more winnable fights for him in the UFC, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of winnable fights for poor Hyun Park, and that kind of goes both ways in this one. I don't see an easy path for either one of these guys.
Yeah, whoever called us out for being negative about the female fight, fun fact, I don't think either one of these fighters are going to win the title.
No, I think that one's fair, so we'll move forward in the next one. Canan's taking on Kevin.
A fun one.
Jousset. And Matt, when you look at this fight, this is the funny thing for me. I put up all those Instagram polls. You got to do them individually to make sure that they all pop up and that they're all in order. And when I put this one out, when I went back through to check and see what the votes were and see if they were actually working, this one surprised me. 59% of the fans had the underdog, Kenan, to get the win. And I talked about all of the positives for Kenan, and there's always positives until they become not positives and they become negatives again. And Kenan's one of those guys that he's proof positive that the old science adage, that's not an adage, it's actually fact. 2 negatives make a positive. 2 Kenan negatives make a bad night out and an L. So you take those 2 and you just negative, it's an L. If you look at it for Kenan in this fight against Kevin Jousset, the reason why I think Kenan wins is he has a much more just accentuated striking skill set than Kevin Jousset. And Jousset's been able to get better as he's been at City Kickboxing, because you got to think about it. For Jousset, he's a judoka, like Edgar, like Santos. He was able to get that going in a country where, hey, judo's pretty big in France. And so for Jousset, we saw him withstand the early storms last time out there against Kiefer Crosby, get the submission win. It's just, for me, I like the guy training for this one at Bangtao Muay Thai in Song Kenan to get the win.
I still don't know if Kenan can stand up to some of the shots of Jousset. And you're right. You look at the gym, you see City Kickbox, you're like, oh, Carlos Alberg, Israel Adesanya. Are we getting another one of those? And Jousset is a little bit more stiff on the feet. He's not nearly as diverse. I do think his overall boxing, it's not a negative by any means. He can land pretty good shots, and he's got decent power for the division too, because both these guys, I'd say, are quite big for the division, but Jousset is absolutely massive. So I will be interested to see how Kenan does stand up to some of those shots. And on the mat, I'm really interested to see how both these guys do, because Song Kenan is a very well-rounded mixed martial artist. I know we all didn't applaud the straight shots down the middle of the offensive wrestling, but he does do fairly well at every single aspect of MMA. I just worry about the overall durability of him, and if he does get hurt, will he be able to withstand not only the ground and pound on the mat, but also the overall grappling from Jousset?
Well, and if you do consider it, I mean, Song Kenan was a fairly big underdog his last time out against Rolando Bedoya, who was praised in a UFC debut kind of close fight that I didn't think that he won. But if you look at it, I mean, for Song Kenan, he was just bouncing the basketball against Rolando, and I counted a couple of knockdowns where he was only credited one in the third round. There was one in the second round as well. So for me, I do like Song Kenan in the matchup. Again, the fans at Fight Night Picks on Instagram, they're going with Song Kenan in the matchup, but I know you have Kevin Jousset, and I think this is going to be a fun fight that gets us set up for the main card.
It's a fight that's going to tell us a lot about Jousset, right? Because no matter what you think about Kenan as an overall prospect, a win over him does tell you quite a bit, and a loss to him doesn't ruin your career, I don't think.
Well, there's a couple of things. Avocado fan page. Song Kenan is bad at MMA. I watched him take down Israel Adesanya. I watched him nearly drop Brad Riddell, and he has a positive record in the UFC. If
someone makes a point that bad, why pay attention to it?
That's the Avocado fan page. Claude Bartman is not going to know what to do with themselves after Fight Night Picks is over. The old tip of the cap to the good week last week. And yeah, we'll go with one more. Marcus Mustard did not watch the weigh-ins yet. Joseph makes a good point. Odds DC calls Song Kenan Song Yadong. If he's commentating, I'd say they're pretty damn high. All right, Matt. We'll move into the next matchup. This gets us kicked off on the main card. Junyoung Park taking on Andrea Muniz. And Matt, for Park, he's won 4 straight fights.
On a heater.
He's won 3 straight fights by submission, all of them by rear naked choke. Andrea Muniz, he is the grappling ace. These two guys have a couple of common opponents in the past. Andrea Muniz went from the slowest burn coming into the UFC. Hey, kid. Dana White definitely said that to a guy in his 30s. Hey, kid, get a couple of wins on Contender Series. He did. Then he was able to get it going. Kenny Perrin saying, do you think Muniz has heart?
I don't think he's Jimmy Butler, and I'll leave it at that. When you see Jimmy Butler in memes, he's normally filled with pit bulls inside of his chest. I don't think Andrea Muniz is filled with pit bulls inside of his chest.
I got soul, but I'm not a soldier.
You know what I mean? Like, Jimmy Butler talks shit when he's down by a bunch of points until he's up.
On this show.
They'd say that on ESPN. We're fine. And Jimmy Butler does it when he's back by a lot of points, when he's up by a lot of points. When the fights don't go his way, we do see him really struggle to fight out of some of those negative positions. And as somebody who picked Muniz, I'm really worried about that in this matchup too, because Park is one of these fighters who is a very constant presence no matter what he's doing, whether it be the wrestling or the boxing. And I do think the boxing is going to give him a lot of success in this matchup, because if he's able to cut the distance, really eliminate the size advantage of Muniz, because Muniz is a pretty big guy for the weight division, use some of that boxing on the inside, I think Park can have a lot of success. I just think if Muniz gets that one takedown, that one advantageous position, it's like what I said about the Alencar fight at the start of the card, he might be able to win the fight based on that submission, or he can do so much in that round to where it can negate the success Park has had up until that point. That's why I like Muniz in this matchup, but he's one of those fighters that gave everybody a reason to believe, and then also gave you every reason to just not believe anymore.
Andrea Muniz went from being a 2-1 favorite against Brendan Allen in an impromptu main event the night of in 3 rounds, and then he was a 2-1 favorite his last time out against Paul Craig, who was moving down from 205 to 185. Now all of a sudden he's an underdog in this spot, and for Muniz on the way up, he had the submission of the year, breaking Jacare Souza's arm, retiring the legend. Like, Muniz was able to get things done, but again, in these UFC fights, including the 2 fights on Contender Series, 2.17 strikes landed per minute to 2.03 strikes absorbed per minute. doesn't do much of the striking. It's very basic. From his Instagram, he's doing a lot of grappling. He became the South American absolute BJJ champ in the tournament that he was in. And for Jun Young Park, the grappling almost comes secondary, which seems wild for me to say if you only look at the results. But these rear naked chokes, they've been good. The Joseph Holmes one, bigger guy. Joseph Holmes not that good.
He's not.
But if you look at his last time out, that really is. I think that's almost best career win. Yeah, the Ray Cooper submission when Cooper's going for the takedown, he gets the anaconda choke. That was awesome. For Jun Young Park to out-wrestle Shavkat Rakhmonov when they were both early on in their career, that was really awesome. I think this is going to be one of those opportunities where the floor might be a little bit like lava, and Jun Young Park comes out with a more striking approach or striking heavy approach. We have a look at Fight Night picks for the total votes. 72% of the fans going with Park in this one.
I'm staying on this island all alone.
And that's fair. And for me, I have Jun Young Park in the matchup. But I think this is going to be a fun fight. And it's an oil meets water in a division that, hey, these two guys, they're pretty well just outside of the top 15.
I think Park is a much more well-rounded athlete. Don't get me wrong. Like, I can't disagree with anybody for picking Park, and I understand why he's such a big favorite. But I don't look at Jun Young Park and think he's a 10 out of 10 in fight IQ. He's a 10 out of 10 with some of his grappling. So I do think it comes down to if he does just make that one mistake, it's going to be over for him. Because I don't think Park's going to spend a ton of time in the top 15 if he does get there.
I don't think Andre Muniz.
No, not that I do. But Muniz has one of those skill sets to where his grappling can match guys in the top 15 when he's able to get it to those spots.
352 tuning in. We got to break that 100 mark for the likes.
Like Craig in the back of those gender reveal photos.
Chris over there in the comments section. I wonder if Andre Muniz he's only playing one song in the back. They got him in the dressing room. He's playing J. Cole. Last night took a L, but tonight I bounced back. Probably not, but that'd be pretty cool. Matt, again, this is an interesting fight. We're split on the pick here. And then we move forward to a fight that you can find the individual video out there because I was in another province, another city, and we taped it. We have Tim Elliott accepting a fight on incredibly short notice, made the weight. This one at a special bantamweight divisional, I guess, slot, and it is because of that short notice nature. Sumudaerji was supposed to be taking on Alan Nascimento, so for him, things don't change all that much, but they do change a little bit. Alan Nascimento, really high guard, Muay Thai stance, likes to grapple. Tim Elliott, hands incredibly low, moves his head a ton, and he does a really good job of it. He's got that bend but don't break chin because, of course, as we talked about at the start of the week, 2 knockdowns, 4 for Tim Elliott in his entire 19-fight UFC career. He's never officially been knocked down, but he has been put on skates before. So when you look at it for Tim Elliott, he takes this fight against Sumudaerji. You assume that the wrestling is better, but I haven't seen Sumudaerji kind of completely out-grappled since he debuted in 2018 against Luis Smolka. Yes, his last time out, a year and a half ago, he did lose by submission against Matt Schnell. But when you do look at it for Sumudaerji, years and years now at Team Alpha Male, we'll see what the grappling defenses look like. And if we get a pure striking matchup in this one, those straight shots from Sumudaerji, this could be the first knockdown and maybe even a knockout loss for Tim Elliott.
Well, let's think about Tim Elliott, right? He might not have an official knockdown on his record. It's not like it's not coming, right? Like, no one's like, oh, Tim Elliott's never going to get dropped in his career. He's not like a Max Holloway in that respect. Because Tim Elliott, remember the stunner? The stunner's one of the great finishers in WWE history because of how people would take it. And there was one where he hits The Rock, and The Rock just stands up, and then Stone Cold, like, lines him up for another one, and then boom, that worked with the camera, too. And it was just perfect, right? I do think Tim Elliott could be on the receiving end of one of those big shots if Munerji's able to meet him halfway, because that is the weird thing about this matchup. Both guys are going to get a lot of their work done, primarily with the boxing, but they use a lot of the footwork for guys who are boxers, and that's why I think we're going to get a long period of maybe a bit of inactivity, maybe it'll be a bit stale, because both guys are going to enjoy that long range, and it might take them a little while to really settle into the matchup, but I think Tim Elliott's going to be the one to initiate a lot of these exchanges, and if anyone is going to go for the grappling, more likely than not, it is Tim Elliott, and he's one of these grapplers to where he's not going to be like Khabib, right? He won't be 7 for 9 on his takedown attempts, but even if he goes 3 for 13 and just gets a lot of that control time without getting knocked down, I think it can be enough to win it on the scorecard.
That's it, 3.73 takedowns per 15 minutes for Tim Elliott. The question there, completely unrelated from Mujib Rahmani. Why do you guys think the UFC isn't giving Javid Basharat a fight? He said in an interview he's ready, but the UFC...
ask about.
Probably because he kicked a guy in the cup and then did the complete opposite of an apology and just completely continued with a poor narrative.
If you think that's
Victor
the worst
Henry
thing that's ever happened in MMA,
was faking it. So yeah, I think that guy's an absolute turkey for the way that he handled that fight against Victor Henry. But Matt, when it does come down to this one, for Sumudaerji, we know how good the straight shots are. We know how good the striking is. We know how good Tim Elliott's wrestling is. I don't know what the fans are thinking on this one, so we have a look at Fight Night Picks. And 68% going with Tim Elliott to get the win. But again, if you look at it, I mean, Sumudaerji is such a good striker. You saw the fight against Zaruk Adashev, at least the start. You saw the Malcolm Gordon knockout. This was a guy that really was able to win over a large segment of the UFC fan, the MMA fan. So a big opportunity right there. But yeah, for me, I do like Tim Elliott in the fight.
I also like Tim Elliott, but this is a really exciting fight because if Sumudaerji is able to win this one, it does get him ahead in the division. I know it's up 10 pounds. It's kind of a weird fight, right? But it's still a huge fight to have, or a name to have on your resume.
Yeah, and these guys are neck and neck in the rankings at 125. You have to think with a win, it probably does benefit somebody, even though it's at bantamweight. It's kind of that UFC 279 parallel, the Diaz fights, the D-Rod fights, all those.
I just feel like Tim Elliott's one of those vets to where he's still in that category, to where, okay, is Tim Elliott in his prime? Maybe not, but if you get a win over him, that's still a respected name when you then look at that guy's tapology in the future, right? It's like, hey, he went out there, he put on a good performance against Tim Elliott. Although I still have Elliott in this fight, of course.
All right, Matt. So we move forward to the fight that a lot of people want to talk about. And an early Fight Night Picks fan favorite. It's Nasrat Haqparast. He's taking on Jamie Mullarkey. If you look at it for Haqparast, the only time we've really seen him struggle with a striker to the fact where he got put down, it was that tricky counter strike out of Drew Dober that dropped him and finished him. And so from Nasrat Haqparast in these recent performances, last time out, they didn't give him the 50K. Now, last weekend, they were like, hey, the stuff that's coming about that's, you know, out there on the Twitters, maybe we put a little bit more money in the fighters' pockets. So everybody got a bonus, everybody got a little bit of money. But for Nasrat Haqparast last time out, I don't know how he didn't get the bonus against Landon Quinones. That was an awesome fight to watch and rewatch. And Landon Quinones is a good fighter, and hopefully he's around for a long time in the UFC. But for Nasrat Haqparast, tricky southpaw striker. He mixed it to the body, to the head. Not a big kicker. Cardio's pretty darn good over 3 rounds. We've seen that. For Jamie Mullarkey, we talk about knockdown ratios all the time. And for a long time, it was like, guys, what are you talking about? You say this guy's getting put on skates, but by the numbers, he's not. Well, by the jeepers, yes, he is. So for Jamie Mullarkey, we'll see how he's able to withstand and overcome in this matchup. He's had a couple of fights against southpaws in the UFC. He split them. So again, when it does come down to this one, I do like Nasrat Haqparast. I think he's got a little bit of a speed advantage. But when it does come down to this, folks, whoever you are out there in the comments, you're saying such and such, so-and-so about reach. These two guys can actually use their reach advantages. Sometimes Mullarkey crashes forward when he shouldn't. We saw that in the fight against Muhammad Naimov that he was winning until he lost. But for me, I do like Haqparast here.
I like Haqparast in the fight, but the weird thing about this matchup is neither fighter, I would say, holds one massive advantage over the other one that you can just immediately point to and say, hey, he can take advantage of it, because they are both pretty good strikers. They both have good cardio, right? I don't expect one to just completely take over in the third round compared to the other. The output, I'm quite similar to the two, but I agree with you. I think speed is the biggest differentiator between these two, and I do think that speed advantage helps Nasrat Haqparast, and not only with the hand speed, right? Because he does have great hand speed in the pocket, but he moves his feet pretty well for a guy who doesn't really throw a lot of kicks. He's going to use his own boxing. He's going to dart in from the outside to the inside, and I do think the overall speed, not only with the hands, but with the feet as well, is what's going to give Haqparast this win. But this is one of those fun fights, right? Both guys who are kind of in limbo in the division, who need a big win on their resume. This is that fight for both these athletes, and again, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if Mullarkey went out there, caught Haqparast with like an awkward shot down the middle and maybe got the finish, but I agree with you. I just think the speed for Nasrat is such an X factor.
Yeah, so both of us in this one going with Nasrat Haqparast. If you have a look at Fight Night Picks for the total votes on this one, 70% going with Haqparast, the 30% that have Jamie Mullarkey. We've seen it before where Jamie Mullarkey's incorporated a wrestling heavy attack. We saw that when this fight was supposed to be booked, or was booked, back in February. Mullarkey gets a short notice Francisco Prado, who was an absolute buzzsaw in the regional scene in South America. A lot of knockouts. Groggy Pooper saying, already 3 beers deep. Not sure I'll make it to the main event. Thanks for the years of good work. Nothing but well wishes for you and yours.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the super chat and be safe with the beers. But when you do look at this one, again, for Mullarkey, if he goes out there with a wrestle-heavy approach, like we saw Dan Hooker do, it could be a tough night out for Haqparast.
Does the winner of this get like a guy who was in the top 15 who's now on hard times? Do they get Dan Hooker? Like, just a weird name. Probably not Dan Hooker, but you know what I mean? Just a level of fighter to where they were a star. They're not really winning as much. No one really comes to mind. It's just the winner of this does get a good spot, I would say, their next time out.
Bobby Green, maybe?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good fight. Just somebody of that level who's got at least a name, right? Because you don't look at Haqparast or Mulliky as someone who's going to be in the top 10, the top 5, but they're going to put on exciting fights, especially depending on what the matchup is. I think you're right. A Bobby Green fight for both these guys would be a really exciting fight.
It might be a reach too far in the rankings, but Bobby Green's up there in age, and he just got brutally knocked out in the first round. And it's kind of similar. Like, you look at next weekend.
I think that's another good name.
Next weekend, the first fight that's on the card, you got Randy Brown taking on Muslim Salikov. They're right outside of the top 15. Case has just turned 36 yesterday, and he's on a losing streak, so I think the winner of that fight's going to come into the rankings. There's a lot of big things that are going to change. There's 18 ranked fighters on next weekend's card, and lucky day, I made the joke, or I at least answered there. There's no Otani on this card. Otani would never be on an Apex
card. He makes $70 million a year. That's why there's no Otani on this card.
All right, Matt. Co-main event time. Anthony Smith on short notice, taking on Khalil Roundtree. I took the underdog at the start of the week. I still have him in the fight. I think Anthony Smith can get it done. And I rolled the clip. I said, hey, I didn't think about it. I'll do it in post. And you're darn tootin'. I did right at the end. But Anthony Smith in his fight against Volkan Oezdemir when he was here in New Brunswick, and I'm taping it, he's saying, yeah, I got to go back to the gym. Got to work with Mark Montoya on defending leg kicks. Hasn't changed in 5 years. So, Matt, for Anthony Smith, he's got to worry about those kicks. For Khalil Roundtree, you'll see the oblique kick. You'll see the big wind-up when he does throw the leg kick.
It's like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. I need to fix my jumper, and then he just still shot like that.
Yeah, it was never that good. But, yeah, again, for me, in this one, I do like Anthony Smith because I think the grappling can win out. And if you think of some of the fights that he's had, the Gustafsson fight and so on, there's been a lot of spots where Anthony Smith was an underdog. He was overlooked. And I think in this one, it's another one of those spots where you're taking on a striking special in Roundtree who's shown a propensity to getting taken down in his losses.
He has. But Anthony Smith has taken so much damage since that Gustafsson fight, and that's what I worry about. If you want to tell me Smith is the more skilled fighter, I will not disagree with you 1 second. I'd just be wasting my breath if I was. I just don't know if he can eat the big shots from Khalil Roundtree at this stage, and I don't even think Khalil is as big of a puncher as advertised, right? Like, there's bigger power guys in this division. Yuri, Pereira, like, there's just guys who have a higher level of power than him. I just don't know if Anthony Smith can still take these shots, even at 205 pounds. And I know if you want to look at the resume, a lot of those knockout losses are from 185 pounds, but they're starting to rack up at 205 too. And if he's able to get the fight down to the mat, I think he has a great chance to win this one. But if he has to eat 2 left hooks and a right leg kick every time he goes for a takedown, I just don't know if Anthony
I don't think he's going to take any damage in this fight. I think this is
fine.
such.
You can think that.
I think this is such an oddball litmus test just because it's on short notice that I do think Anthony Smith is going to get the win.
I think Anthony Smith has been finished double-digit times in his career.
That's
Fight
a
Night
concerning
picks
amount. 67% of the fans going with Khalil Roundtree to get the win in this one. And again, the fans are going with Roundtree. I'm on the island in this one. Again, there's a few fights where we're on the island this week, but I'm on the island of going with Smith in this one. I do think he's
and
a
he
little
won't
bit
take any damage.
I think he's a little too well-rounded. I don't think he's going to take the damage you think he's going to take.
But no, I just don't think he can take any. Like, that's my whole point. I just don't know if Anthony Smith can hold up to clean power shots from guys at 205. And Khalil Roundtree has decent hand speed at this stage of his career, even though he's not the youngest guy himself. So if he's able to land consistently, I just don't know if Anthony Smith's going to be able to get the spots or get the fight to the
trouble
spot.
For me is for Khalil Roundtree, we've seen those A-plus performances, like the one against Carl Robertson where he beats him up on the feet. He's dropping Robertson can't get the grappling going. He's throwing those soccer kicks when Robertson's down. It's great. It's awesome. But again, like the Andrew Sanchez fight, the fights where he struggled with the wrestling.
You've got me all wrong. I don't think Khalil's at Smith's point. I think Smith's gone down to Khalil's. That's all.
And then you consider it the fight where, of course, Khalil Roundtree, he's taking on Marcin Prachniow, and it's a battle of ups and downs in terms of volume and activity. We've just seen oddball performances out of both of these guys in their careers. But again, we are split on this pick, and that gets us set for the main event of the evening. Song Yadong taking on Chris Gutierrez. And this is one of those fights, Matt, where when it was booked, I went, huh? It's weird. Now, the thing that everybody's going to forget about, and about the 400 people that are tuning in right now, this card, not that long ago, was supposed to take place in Shanghai. Austin Lefebvre hitting up the super chat. Much appreciated from you. Boys, what's this news I hear about Fight Night Picks, kicks coming to an end? Don't say it's true. Me and Steve here from Florida wishing the Allen brothers the best. Austin Lefebvre and your buddy Steve, who's tuning in from Florida. I think I announced it at UFC 294, so it's been a while, like Stain used to sing about. And then Aaron Lewis decided country was for me. But Matt, Way back then,
Sam
I said that UFC 296, the last card of the year, would be the last card. I don't have a social life outside of doing any of this stuff, and I'm not present in my regular life, so I'm going to go fishing, and I'm going to enjoy it throughout next year. Yeah, that's what it's about. I've been doing this since 2018 nonstop. It's time to take a break. But Matt, when it does come down to this, Song Yadong, Chris Gutierrez, it was supposed to be UFC Shanghai. There was supposed to be the finale of the Road to UFC tournament. 125, 135, 145, 155. And now all of that, it's in the rearview mirror. We're in the small confines of the Apex, and we get this main event.
This is a weird fight because in my mind, I put fighters into kind of different categories, right? You have your prospects on the rise, you have your prospects on the decline, you have your contenders, and then you have guys who can win fight of the night any given night. I just don't really have these guys in the same place in the division in my mind. And I could be wrong saying that, right? If you think Chris Gutierrez can go on and fight in the top 5, top 10 for a long time, you could probably make a good argument. But in my mind, the worst version of Song Yadong is still probably going to stick around in the top 15 because of the intangibles he has athletically. He has insane hand speed, really nice footwork too. I know the bigger guys in the division can kind of overpower him, right? That's the one thing Song Yadong doesn't necessarily have. He's not one of the bigger guys physically. He looks small against, not only Corey Sandhagen, we saw that. If Aljamain Sterling were to fight him, Aljamain would look quite big compared to him as well. But I still think those intangibles are going to keep him in the top of the division. Whereas for Chris Gutierrez, could his best performance beat anybody in that category? Yes, I think it could because he is such a talented striker. But I liken him almost a little bit more into that fight of the night category. Like he's going to go in there and have fun fights where he's going to land leg kicks, eat some shots from his opponent, and probably have a close fight by the end of it if it doesn't end in a finish. And maybe, like I said, maybe he does show up his best version, kicks that front leg out of Song Yadong and just beats the brakes off him with his boxing. I just think overall, the overall speed of Song Yadong is the difference between these two, and I think his ability to get from the outside to the inside is what's going to win him this fight.
Michael Salazar's asked the same question twice. Does anyone else think that Song may have an edge because of what his team's known for? Michael, what's his team known for? Wrestling? If you look at this fight, Chris Gutierrez was known on his way up to have decent wrestling. Now, kind of similar to what I said about Khalil Roundtree's last time out. You look at the losses that Gutierrez has in the UFC, it's been because he struggled with some of the wrestling. The first round against Cody Durden, the 10-8, the fight that he had against Raoni Barcelos, he struggled in the wrestling. Kenny Perrin hitting the super chat. Go from beating Ryan Spann to a big underdog against a guy that's never beat anybody. I don't know. I thought, again, that Robertson loss was just...
Okay, we also make fun of Carl Robertson.
That was disgusting. That was a disgusting win. So, when you do look at this one, again, Chris Gutierrez is more than just those leg kicks. That is his apex skill. That is his Bill the Butcher knife sharpening move. But if you look at it for Gutierrez, I mean, the boxing can be good. The hands, they're placed very well. I mean, he keeps them high enough so he can block his head, but his arms are so gosh darn long that it's low enough to block his liver, and he moves them very well. So for a guy like Song Yadong that has those flying fists of fury, that moves so fast, again, the fight that we all want to see is, of course, who was it? Conor McGregor and Petr Yan that faced off today? What was
that the fight?
Yeah, what was the Petr Yan face-off that he had today? Somebody will let us know in the chat, but I'd like to see Petr Yan fight Song Yadong. I'd like to see Petr Yan fight anybody, but the Song Yadong fight would be good. Regardless, when you do look at it, Matt, for Song Yadong, the hand speed, the wrestling can be good, but again, on the same token, if you look at it for Song Yadong, he has struggled in some of these grappling exchanges in the UFC. So for Michael Salazar and his question, Song Yadong's not your blueprint team alpha male type of fighter. He's the guy that comes in, that accentuates the wrestler's striking, and the wrestlers try and accentuate a little bit off of him as well.
He looked good against Ricky Simone, though. I do agree with you. Like, the wrestling defense always has been an issue for him, but against Simone, who is very well known for his wrestling, the striking has come a long way. I thought it was a pretty nice, complete performance from Song Yadong that at least does give you confidence that, yes, you're right. Is the offensive wrestling gotten up to that level? Probably not, but at least the defensive wrestling is slowly coming behind the striking because, again, I don't think he's going to go out there and start Khabibing people anytime soon. Like, the boxing and the hand speed is what's going to carry him up to the heights of wherever he does end up landing in the bantamweight division because Song Yadong's one of these fun prospects to where he is very talented, but he also goes out there and does have some really exciting fights as well.
And Michael, I appreciate you for asking the question, and thank you. Imagine Petr Yan won championship. Imagine Petr Yan fighting
John
Lineker. That'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, Michael, even further to the point, Sumudaerji's on this card, and he trains there, and he's been there for years. So 86% of the fans at Fight Night Picks on the Instagram going with Song Yadong, 74% here in the chat. So it's an interesting parallel there. Anybody that's hit up the super chat, we really do appreciate you. 2. Both of us in this one going with Song Yadong. But if you've ever tuned into Question Mark Kicks, you know we reset the deck at the very end and we let you know who we have. Matt, the first fight on the card, Hyun dos Santos, a.k.a. Hyun Amanda, taking on Talita Alencar. I'm going with Dos Santos / Amanda, first name Hyun, but I don't like it in this one. It's a really hard fight to predict.
I have Dos Santos, but you always got to worry whenever anybody you pick is fighting a specialist, because all they need is that 1 second and they can win the fight, but I do like Dos Santos.
Yeah, it's a tough one there. The next one, Matt, Taira taking on Hernandez. I'll go with Taira until, he ultimately loses. But again, the knockdown, been tough. The submission the second to last time out. He's been tested in these fights against people that everybody counted out.
But also, Cyril God looked good, and then he did start to face adversity, and it didn't look good. So at least we know what Tatsuro looks like. I like him in this matchup.
All right, Matt. The next one, we have Santos missed weight taking on Edgar. If I switch picks on the show, I usually get them wrong, so I'm going to keep it with Luana Santos, but I just don't like the weight miss here.
I'll go with Santos. Also don't like the weight miss.
Yeah, we'll see how that cardio looks if this fight goes on. Garcia taking on Costa. It's my fight of the night. I do have Costa in this one. I think it's going to be a good fight.
Again, I just want the best version of this fight. I also have Costa, but he does leave himself open for big shots. And Steve Garcia is one of those fighters to where if you just give him that 1 second, he's going to land an absolute bomb.
All right, Matt. The next one, we have Hyun Sung Park taking on Shannon Ross. I have Park. We'll see how the grappling plays out in this one.
I also like Park, but it's going to be a weird fight to where it's not close, probably.
If Park got knocked out in the first round, everybody would go nuts. Wouldn't go that nuts. Would not go that nuts if Shannon Ross finally gets in the win column. Song Kenan taking on Kevin Jousset. Matt going with Song. I'm going with Song Kenan in the matchup.
I like Jousset. It should be a really fun fight, though. Again, Kenan's one of those fighters to where the average UFC fan might not put a lot of stock into a win over him, but if Jousset's able to get a win over Kenan, I don't know who they'd match him up with next, but it's definitely going to be a recognizable name.
Bingus
Taylor
man.
Rodriguez, or is that too much of a jump?
Is D-Rod still fighting in the UFC?
Exactly. That's another question. But would it be kind of in that category? You'd say Kenan to D-Rod's a jump, but I don't think it's like a 15-fighter jump.
Yeah, it's that D-Rod, again, Salikov,
Tim Means every now and then shows up like a banshee, so you got to worry about that. But
all right, Matt. Jin Young Park taking on Andre Muniz. I have Park in the fight.
Everything tells me don't take Muniz, but I like him in this fight.
All right, Matt. The next one, we have Elliott versus Sumudaerji. Just enjoy it for what it's worth. I'm going to go with Tim Elliott, but listen, let's see the improvements in a year and a half off for Sumudaerji, who was in a 2-round fight of the year contenders last time out.
I worry a little bit about the short notice nature for Tim Elliott, but he is one of those fighters who's always kind of active no matter what, right? I don't really worry that Tim Elliott's outside the gym, not training, so I like Elliott because of the overall activity. I do think that's going to be important.
Zanny Pacquiao's question about would you rather see a fighter leave too soon as a prospect or leave too late as a known failed prospect?
Leave too soon, because then you can always come back.
Leave too soon, but your perfect example of that, when is he ever going to come back, Matt? Yusuf Zalal, what's he up to? Where's he been?
Well, who was the guy? Jared Brooks was the guy I always use as an example. I thought he had beat Figueiredo when they fought. He out-wrestled him a lot. He had that weird slam knockout where he just got put in a bad position and lost, and all of a sudden he was gone, but he's a really talented fighter. All
right, Matt. Nasrat Haqparast taking on Jamie Mueller-Key, going with Haqparast in this one.
I also have Haqparast, but I would be surprised if this was fight of the night by the end of the event whatsoever.
Weird Uncle Terry. Zabit is not a failed prospect, and he's not a too-soon prospect. He's just a guy who wanted to retire once he hit the top 15.
He's a what could have happened.
Anthony Smith taking on Khalil Roundtree. Give me that Smith.
I like Khalil.
You think anybody's ever sung Anthony Smith's name into an Eazy-E song? Probably not. All right.
He's lived a long life, I'm sure.
Yep.
A full one.
Song Yadong taking on Chris Gutierrez. Going with Song Yadong in this one. I think we're in agreement here.
I also like Song Yadong in this matchup. Again, I would like this to be a competitive fight, just to where both guys kind of prove that they are of that level in the top 15, because there's so many fun fights to be had at 135, no matter what the result is for either one of these fighters, but I do agree with you. I like Song Yadong.
Matt, some big-time fights on this card last week. It went kind of topsy-turvy. It was a really weird week, but, I mean, coming up next weekend, UFC 296, 2 title fights up at the top, the rematch between Pantoja and Royval. It was a 2021 performance of the night for Pantoja, and if you look at it in that main event, a big-time opportunity. Leon Edwards' second title defense, and he gets to take on a guy who hasn't fought in like 2 years, Colby Covington, in an awful fight that was fight of the night against Jorge Masvidal, their retirement fight. So, Matt, I don't know if I'm jammed or excited for that main event, but I will tell you what, it is a good card. There are tons of ranked fighters on that. Only one rookie debut in Gaziev, who just fought on Contender Series. Matt, a giant super chat from Slap.
Thank you so much.
Love you guys. Best in the business. You guys have the best breakdowns of the fights. I appreciate you guys. You'll be back for 296. Much love. Much love or much love. Much appreciated. The super chat from you, from Slop, the first one out there. Bingus man giving you that legend comp, and you are a ledge, so much appreciated to you. You will be able to find us next week again with the 296 breakdowns. Make sure you toss a like here, you toss a like there, toss a like everywhere. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say.
Let's get into it.